Hey everyone! We are working to hit 1,000 subscribers and I need your help to get there. If you enjoy the content and it is your first time here, please hit that subscribe button right now as we proceed. Subscribe to this channel right now and pay close attention, because the story we are building today is not just about a ranking. It is not just about a quarter-final result at a prestigious tournament. It is about a 20-year-old woman from the Philippines who has spent the past year winning matches she was not supposed to win, filling arenas that established superstars cannot fill, breaking records that nobody else has broken, and doing all of it while navigating a pattern of treatment from the institution that governs her sport that has become impossible to look at honestly and explain away with innocent justifications. World number 31. That is where Alexandra Eala sits after her Dubai duty-free tennis championship campaign ended in the quarterfinals. 16 places jumped in a single tournament. A new career high. The highest ranking ever achieved by any Filipino tennis player in the history of the Open era. And the context surrounding that number, the officiating incidents, the court assignments, the crowds locked outside stadiums, the timing of disruptions that arrived at the most inconvenient moments imaginable, and the growing chorus of the sport's most respected voices calling the pattern out by name, makes the number not just a milestone but a verdict. The evidence is assembled. The witnesses have spoken. And the ranking does not lie. Let us establish the full picture of what Eala has accomplished in the past 12 months before we go anywhere else, because the statistical foundation of this story needs to be understood completely before the surrounding context lands with its full weight. She began 2025 ranked 147th in the world. She is ending February 2026 ranked 31. That is a journey of 116 ranking places in approximately 12 months, achieved not through a comfortable, protected path against lower-tier opposition but through a series of wins against players whose names appear at the very top of the sport's hierarchy. She has now defeated 3 top 10 players in WTA rankings, a list that includes Madison Keys, then the reigning Australian Open champion. It includes Iga Swiatek, 5-time Grand Slam champion and multiple world number 1. And it now includes Jasmine Paolini, ranked 8th in the world, a former French Open finalist, and one of the most respected competitors on the tour. 3 top 10 wins before breaking into the top 20 herself. She is the only female player in WTA history to have beaten a world number 2 and multiple Grand Slam champions before reaching that threshold. That is not hype constructed by a passionate fanbase. That is documented, verifiable, historically unprecedented fact. And the WTA's response to a player producing this kind of performance on this kind of trajectory has been a series of decisions that, assembled together, form a picture that the sport's own champions are now publicly describing as disrespectful. Let us go back to Miami 2025, because the Miami chapter is not just the origin story of Eala's rise. It is also where the institutional discomfort with what she represents first made itself visible in ways that went beyond scheduling logistics. She is in the middle of her quarterfinal against Iga Swiatek, playing the best tennis of her career. The crowd is generating the kind of energy that Miami had not seen in that round of a tournament in years. Momentum is entirely in her favor. And in that exact moment, not before the match, not after the match, not during a changeover when the interruption would have been least disruptive, an umpire raises an issue about items in her bag. On the court, during the match, while she is mid-flow against the most dominant player in the sport. The timing of that intervention is the detail that will not submit to innocent explanation regardless of how many times you attempt to apply one. Professional tennis officials do not interrupt Grand Slam caliber matches against top 5 players to conduct equipment inspections. It does not happen. And it did not happen to anyone else in that tournament. It happened to Eala, at the specific moment when she was closest to completing one of the most significant upsets the women's game had recently produced. She did not crack. She did not let it derail her. She went back to the baseline and finished the job. But the timing said everything that official language would never say out loud. The qualifier incident adds another layer to the same uncomfortable pattern. A ball called out that was demonstrably inside the lines, visible to anyone watching, confirmed by the mark on the court. Standard review procedure should have corrected the call immediately and awarded Eala the point. Instead, officials ordered a full replay of the point. In professional tennis, that is not standard operating procedure. Either the ball is in or it is out. You review it and you apply the correct ruling. You do not replay crucial points because the situation is controversial and the correct ruling would favor the player who is already generating friction with the officiating apparatus. Eala walked to the chair umpire. She looked them in the eye. Calm and completely firm, she said the words that have since been shared and replayed tens of thousands of times across every tennis platform available. I know what you are doing. 4 words. Delivered with the quiet authority of someone who has done the calculation, reached the conclusion, and refused to pretend the conclusion is anything other than what it is. She went back to the baseline and won the match anyway. And the tennis world that was watching understood that something larger than a line call had just occurred on that court. The Australian Open brought the most publicly visible dimension of this pattern to a global audience. Fans traveled from across Asia, from the Philippines, from the Middle East and beyond specifically to watch Eala compete at her first Australian Open main draw appearance. They arrived at Melbourne Park and found queues that stretched around the stadium and beyond. Thousands of people who had spent significant money and made significant personal sacrifices to be present for a historic moment could not get into the court where the historic moment was happening because the court was simply too small to accommodate the crowd that Eala generates. And the detail that makes this inexcusable rather than merely unfortunate is the one Jessica Pegula revealed in the clearest possible terms. She had been explicitly told that the Australian Open had witnessed its best crowd in recent memory, and that this record-breaking turnout was driven significantly by the presence of Alex Eala. The institution knew. It knew in advance. It knew the crowd was coming and it knew the court could not hold them. And it put her on that court anyway. When Pegula, a Grand Slam finalist and one of the most respected voices in the women's locker room, describes that decision as disrespect, she is not speaking casually or hyperbolically. She is applying the most precise available word to a decision that by any rational analysis cannot be explained as oversight. Novak Djokovic's intervention in this conversation carries a weight that transcends even Pegula's powerful advocacy, because Djokovic occupies a unique position in the architecture of professional tennis. 24 Grand Slam titles. The most decorated singles player in the history of the sport. A man who has navigated every political and institutional dimension of professional tennis across a career spanning more than 2 decades. When he pointed at the WTA's management of Eala's fixtures and said directly that it contributed to her elimination at the Australian Open, he was not making an emotional claim driven by fan loyalty. He was making the specific, informed assessment of someone who understands from the inside how institutional decisions about court assignments and scheduling affect match outcomes for players whose fan bases generate the kind of atmospheric pressure that Eala's crowds produce. He said she deserves all the respect in the world. He said the WTA is not giving her that respect. And he said it publicly, loudly, and without the diplomatic softening that most figures in his position would apply to a statement critical of a governing body in their sport. You do not look away from that. You cannot. The ranking rise itself, 147th to 31 across 12 months, is the answer to every institutional obstacle that has been placed in front of her. The results do not lie in ways that officiating decisions and court assignments can distort. When you win the match, the point is yours regardless of the replay ruling. When you close out the tiebreak, the ranking points accumulate regardless of which court you were scheduled on. And Eala has been closing out matches at a rate and against opposition of a quality that the WTA's official hierarchy simply cannot ignore indefinitely, regardless of what its scheduling decisions suggest about its inclinations. World number 31 is not a ranking that can be dismissed as a fluke or a hot streak or a product of a favorable draw. It is the mathematical record of what happens when a player with genuine, elite-level talent encounters top 10 opponents and wins more often than she loses. 3 top 10 victories before reaching the top 20 is history. The institution does not get to write the record books. The record books write themselves. What makes this entire story ultimately inspiring rather than purely outrage-inducing is the specific character of the person at the center of it. She called out the umpire and went back to work. She took the small court and filled it beyond capacity. She lost the first-round match at the Australian Open and sat in the press conference and said with complete honesty that her body was carrying the fatigue of what the tournament week had demanded of it. She has not made excuses. She has not pointed fingers in ways that invite sympathy and deflect accountability. She has competed, she has grown, she has broken records, and she has conducted herself throughout this entire journey with the grace and composure that Roger Federer identified when he delivered his 8-word endorsement of her future. And now the movement she has built is large enough, vocal enough, and backed by credible enough voices that the WTA cannot continue to manage her the way it has been managing her without the entire tennis world watching and drawing its own conclusions. Drop your voice in this conversation right now. Do you believe the pattern of incidents surrounding Eala's treatment by the WTA reveals something that goes beyond scheduling mistakes and administrative oversights? Does Djokovic speaking out change the way you see this situation? And how high do you think she climbs before the year is over? Get everything into the comments immediately, smash that like button to push this story to every tennis fan who needs to see it, subscribe to this channel so you do not miss a single update on this extraordinary journey, and share this video because this conversation deserves to be louder than it currently is. Eala is world number 31. She is a movement, and you cannot